refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt.
Welcome to another episode of Black and White and Thin Blue Lines. My name is Clark Eilers.
And I'm Serge Antonin.
This is the fourth year of our podcast, Black and White and Thin Blue Lines. Over the previous 3 years, we've uploaded 112 different episodes. They are all in the podcast format. This is the first time that we're doing a videography or video cast of our podcast. We're pleased to be uploading this to TikTok and other social media, and it's an experiment for both of us. So we welcome our listeners.
Well, it's been a long time coming because Clark will tell you that a lot of our listeners are like, why aren't you guys on YouTube or on TikTok? That's what we always hear. Introduce people to the podcast and they're like, okay, where can I watch it? Up until now, nowhere. So this is our, like Clark said, our new foray into the video realm.
But I do want our listeners to know that the reason we have taken some time is we really want to have a good product, and we've developed a good product over the last 3 years. We're in season 4, and Black and White and Thin Blue Lines really deals with the intersection of criminal justice and race in America. So obviously, one of us is African American, one of us is Caucasian.
You don't say?
Each of us are former police officers. Our topic today is Sean Combs. He's been in the news. He's known to people like me as Sean Combs. He's known to the rest of the world as Diddy, formerly Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. In any event, he's an entertainer. He grew up in Harlem, and he's a reported billionaire for his work in the entertainment industry. He started out at Uptown Records, was allegedly fired. He started his own label, Bad Boy Records, where he had such outstanding performers as Notorious B.I.G., Usher, who he's known since he was 13, incredibly successful. In fact, so successful that in 2006, Chicago Mayor Daley deemed October 13th Diddy Day. He has an honorary doctorate from Howard University.
And the mayor of New York gave him the key to the city. Adams,
key
to the city.
On March 5th, 2016, at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, California, a hallway security camera recorded Diddy, Sean Combs, assaulting his long-term girlfriend, Cassandra, also known as Cassie Ventura. Somehow it was released into the media in 2024. It's created a firestorm. On May 19th, 2024, Diddy texted that he was sorry and that time tells truth. Serge, what was your reaction to seeing the video?
Well, first of all, let me respond to the apology video. I felt like it was very hollow and very self-serving. The video we saw of the beating that he gave this woman, to me, was kind of horrifying. Not only am I a father, but I've got a mother, I've got a wife, and, you know, words hurt enough. But when you beat someone like he beat this woman, it made me think that, because apparently their relationship didn't end right after the beating. So it almost was like she was conditioned. So this wasn't the first time, and this was just the video of his abhorrent behavior, Clark Eilers, and it was terrible.
My background is I was a police officer. Now I make my living as an attorney, and I've defended cases where women have even killed men, and the defense is what's called battered spouse syndrome. If in effect, the woman's conditioned into accepting battery as a normal part of the relationship and eventually acts in what the rest of us would call self-defense. I think that although I'm not married, I was raised, as you were, Serge, that a man never puts his hands on a woman. I know that most of us are curious about, or there's been speculation in the media about what the backstory is. I don't really care what the backstory is.
Yeah, when you see something like that,
I don't care. I don't care if she was walking off with his gold watch or whatever. I don't care if she was walking off with his heart, meaning she was hurting his feelings. I just don't care. What he did was improper. Now, Diddy, or Sean Combs, has a history of run-ins with the law.
And violence.
Right. There's speculation, and I'm not accusing him of anything, but he was an East Coast rapper, and there was a beef with West Coast rappers. Tupac Shakur was shot in Las Vegas on the Strip in 1996.
I remember that.
And there was speculation that Sean Combs was somehow involved in that in some way.
Mm-hmm.
In 1999, there was a famous shooting at a Club New York in Times Square in New York City.
Yes.
He was with J-Lo, and he was arrested following that. A woman named Natanya Rubin claimed that Diddy shot her in the face. He was charged with gun possession and battery. He was acquitted. He was defended by Johnny Cochran and Ben Brafman. Johnny Cochran of
OJ fame.
OJ fame.
Yeah.
In any event, he's had a lot of civil issues in his life as well. In 2003, I found this very significant. The National Labor Committee said that the Sean John clothing brand in Honduras, named after his son, but owned by Diddy, was accused of outrageous mistreatment of employees. And he's had a number of civil suits against him.
Well, you know what this says to me, Clark, when I hear you run down this litany of things, is that while he is, and you said, one of the first things you said was that he's a successful businessman, but it looks like he's a terrible human being, Clark Ellis.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not here to judge whether he's a terrible human being or not.
Well, I'm going to judge.
But I will tell you there was a raid, and this is what makes this topic very important to our listeners today. On March 25th, 2024, the Department of Homeland Security did simultaneous raids in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, as well as arrested Brandon Paul, a suspected drug mule who's part of Diddy's posse. The suggestion of federal authorities was that Combs was involved in sex trafficking or racketeering, which is a criminal enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And the search warrants were approved out of the Southern District of New York, the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Now, that followed a whole bunch of civil issues, and the most interesting civil issue was the woman we just talked about, Cassie Ventura, who is witnessed being kicked in the hallway by Diddy. She filed a civil suit against Sean Combs on November 23rd, 2023.
Which was settled instantly.
The next day.
Instantly.
Now, here are a couple of things that I think Sean Combs should keep in mind. I'm curious of your reaction, Serge. One, the settlement agreement with Cassie Ventura does not bind Cassie Ventura not to testify against him in a criminal case. In fact, it's against public policy. Parties can enter into whatever settlement agreement they want to enter into, but you cannot bind the United States government from calling the person as a witness. Presumably, the prosecutors are looking at these civil suits as kind of the curriculum vitae of Sean Combs' criminality for purposes of the criminal investigation. And one other really interesting thing about these civil cases is a lot of them are being brought by a guy named Tyrone Blackburn, a lawyer out of New York. And he represents Rodney, Little Rod Jones, Grace, Markey, and others right now against Diddy. But the federal judge, and Serge's mother is a retired judge at the state level in New Jersey. And this judge, Judge Denise Cote, C-O-T-E, in New York, is a Clinton appointee. She's been a federal judge for 30 years. She was previously the head of the criminal division of the Southern District, New York U.S. Attorney's Office. And she reported Tyrone Blackburn to the New York grievance for lawyers because she said he was trying to garner media attention and embarrass the defendant. So, this guy Tyrone, I would say, whether the judge is right or wrong, he's accomplished that, because I didn't pay any attention to Sean Combs at all until he became newsworthy because of the federal raids, which followed the civil settlement.
Well, just like in many other cases, over the years we've heard bad things about Diddy, so it's not like this is new. But just like with Marilyn Mosby, and I'm no fan, but I believe
some of our listeners outside of Maryland might not recognize Marilyn Mosby's name.
Well, she's pretty nation famous. But anyway, I think much like her, at this point, Diddy pissed someone off, and here we go. Because one of the things that I think that people overlook, And I'm not taking away victimhood from Cassie, but apparently she was involved in some abuses of his former lady, Kim Porter. Basically, it was their thing to abuse this woman. I don't know if you ever heard that. That's the mother of one or more of his children. And I think it's like bad karma. She knew what she was linked up with. And I don't think that she would testify, personally, that she would testify against Diddy in a criminal trial, personally.
I'm going to have some advice for Diddy and his lawyers towards the end of this episode.
Is that right?
But right away, I want to say, I don't think there's any. The only thing similar to me between Marilyn Mosby and Sean Combs is that both have apparently angered others. But the difference is Marilyn Mosby was the elected state's attorney for Baltimore City and recently convicted in federal court and given a pretty lenient sentence given the convictions. But she was convicted for basically taking money from a retirement account during COVID on a needs basis and not meeting the needs test. That's essentially what they said she did wrong. I view what happened to Marilyn Mosby as a political prosecution. I would not view what happens to Sean Combs as a political prosecution because he's never been elected by anybody.
This is true.
I think he's he's a billionaire, very, very popular figure, and in that regard, he might be upsetting to powerful people.
And he's rubbed elbows with a lot of elected officials.
No question. In fact, one of the more interesting rumors about the search warrants served at his house is that, according to his former bodyguard, P. Diddy had cameras throughout the house. Yeah, I'm not him.
How many names?
Sean Combs had cameras about his house and had parties with a lot of recreational sex and recreational drug use. And apparently some political figures attended those parties and maybe on those tapes.
Maybe he'll change his name again when he goes to prison.
Well, I don't know.
Somebody's Biddy.
I'm not wishing prison on him or anybody else.
Oh, me neither.
But I will say, you say it's interesting that he had, you claim he has a kind of a bad reputation.
He does. I mean, Google.
Well, I find it very interesting. Part of his bad reputation.
Or Google, the black Google, barbershop. Go in the barbershop. They'll let you know.
Probably so.
Yeah.
But part of the bad reputation he might have, it seems to me, is because commercially he wanted a bad reputation. I mean, he starts out by calling his record company Bad Boy Records.
Yeah.
And, of course, Boy has, from my perspective, a racially charged negative connotation. And Bad Boys is, to me, he basically is saying thug life.
Pretty much.
And it's unfortunate. I think that the next thing I think is very unfortunate is because he's angered so many people, I do think, Serge, that he has made a pool of witnesses for the government to choose from.
That's a
valid
words, point you make there, Clark Hollis.
Take the case of Hunter Biden, which is going to be tried next week in Delaware.
He's a bad boy.
Well, apparently so. At least he's lived a questionable life. But the key witness against him is his former sister-in-law, who became his girlfriend.
Which makes him a terrible human being.
Well, I get it. I'm not. But the point is, I would think she's probably a reluctant witness. That's my point.
Okay.
Because she probably has, at a minimum, mixed feelings about Hunter Biden.
Okay.
But the people that have been offended by Sean Combs seem to despise him. So my point is, it makes it very easy for the government to go around and collect witnesses to prosecute him in a criminal case. It's not like they're relying on his friends to come forward, his children to come forward and testify against him, former spouse. I mean, obviously, whatever the relationship was over the years between he and Cassie Ventura, she felt like she could publicly accuse him and shame him on November, and it was shameful enough that he settled with her the next day.
Because I'm sure she knows where the bodies are buried, Clark Hollis.
Probably.
I'm almost certain. Why else would he?
So, Serge.
Yes.
As as a middle-aged African American male, what is your
Who's middle age? What are you
Okay, I'm sorry.
25 is not middle age, Clark.
As a senior citizen,
All right.
there's one senior citizen here. That's me. But as a African American male who sees our federal government in the form of the Homeland Security going after a very popular entertainer, do you have a visceral reaction to whether there's an abuse of power here by our government?
No, because if what they say or allege is true, what makes him special? I mean, there are plenty of guys who we've never heard of who get slammed for this every day, but because it's Diddy, he's...
Well, I will tell you.
I don't think it's...
Well, when you say because it's Diddy, I thought that the conduct of the government in serving the search warrants, to be very candid, I thought it was outrageous.
In what way?
It was an incredible and unnecessary show of force.
Oh, the show of force. Okay.
It was an army going into his homes, and as always, somebody tips the media so that they're there to take the pictures and so forth.
And that's what it's all about.
But I think that's outrageous, and I'm offended by it. Meaning, I believe, like, say Bobby Kennedy, who's running for president. I believe that a government that once seizes power will never relinquish that power, and that any power you give the government will take to the level of abuse. And
I think you're absolutely right.
Well, we have this Bill of Rights. I think Diddy, and here I am, an old white guy with no affection for Diddy, meaning I've never bought one of his recordings. I've never
None of his CDs are in your jukebox?
No, I've never gone to one. I do have a jukebox, but no, I don't have any.
You don't have a Diddy. You don't have one Bad Boy.
I don't have
CD
anybody from Bad Boy Records, as far as I know. But not that there is some
Biggie
rap.
Smalls is the illest, Clark.
There is some rap I actually like, and I thought Notorious B.I.G. was a very
exactly. Biggie Smalls is the illest. Man.
I found him very entertaining.
Yeah.
Usher not so much, but that's me. But
did you say Usher not so much?
Yeah, I'm not an Usher fan.
Did you see the Super Bowl halftime
I saw
show?
it, and that's why I'm not a fan.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Can you roller skate?
No.
Enough said. All right, let's move on.
Last time I roller skated, I sprained my wrist.
There you have it.
Obviously not.
Jealousy will get you nowhere.
Well, I actually think, though, that there was an abuse of power by our government in this, and I think that the abuse of power was the way that the search warrants were served. We're in a militaristic view. There's a scene of the police officer with Diddy's son's hands behind his head, walking him back out of the house to the public street. Thought that was completely unnecessary.
Now, let me ask you this, right? Let's say the government came to serve a search warrant here. Do you think they'd treat us that way, you and I?
I don't know. I really don't know. First of all, this is what I think if they came to serve a search warrant here, and God forbid, I don't think they'd have the press there. In other words, I don't think it would be, I'm not important enough for them to have the press there. This is about the government showing they have a great amount of power and they're willing to use it. And
But you don't think they'd bring us out and secure us like they? I think they'd be like, send the black one out first, and then Clark, you can come out.
The answer is I don't know.
All right.
But I thought it was.
I think they would.
I thought it was unnecessary.
Who is Diddy that?
Well,
he should be treated
Here's
special.
the difference between where I live and where Diddy lives.
Okay.
I don't have an acre between my front door and the front street.
This is true.
In other words, they could have secured that man outside of the public view, very close to the house. That's my point. But they didn't. They walked him back out so the video could take a picture of it. And what America does again and again, in my mind, is it makes people that they deem a criminal, makes them look like a criminal before the trial ever begins.
He loved it. Bad boy. He loved it.
Well, I don't know. Well, I've got some advice for him. You want to hear my advice, Serge?
I want to hear the advice.
Why don't you react to each part of it?
All right, go ahead. Ooh.
Well, it's a 5-point. It's a 5-point plan.
All right.
The first thing is, I think Diddy ought to rehabilitate himself between now and any possible indictment. The indictment would likely come out of the Southern District of New York. Now, why is that important? The Southern District of New York is geographically important because it includes the boroughs of Manhattan and the Bronx, as well as counties in New York: Dutchess, Orange, Putnam, Rockland, Sullivan, and Westchester counties. So here's what I think he should do. First off, he should rebrand Bad Boy Records. And I'm not kidding, he should call it Man Up or Hometown Harlem. He grew up in Harlem. In other words, he should do something to take Bad Boy away, and he should be very public about it and say that Bad Boy might have fit my attitude when I was 21. I'm a father, I'm a business person. I've got to change my brand. Second
Hold
thing,
on. You said you wanted me to react.
Sure, go ahead.
I had a visceral reaction to that first one.
Okay.
First of all, he's Diddy, or whatever you want to call him, is rumored to be a sexual deviant. Okay, so rehabilitate himself in what way? Like, you mean from his sexual deviancy, or?
Well, here's my point. This is why I went into what counties are covered by the Southern District
Okay.
of New York and what boroughs are. The point is the jury pool will come from there. And the jury pool will include people like me, senior Caucasians. And if the image of Diddy is that he is a thug living thug life and involved in shootings in Las Vegas and car bombs.
And likes to go shopping with men.
Well, whatever it is, it'll leave the jury pool with a negative impression going into the trial.
I hear you.
And being a billionaire is great, I assume. I'll never know. But being a billionaire in prison, not so great. So I would say take the money he has and use it as a tool for good. Second thing I suggest is that he take 1/10 of his annual earnings and tithe it, not necessarily to a church. Typically, tithe refers to people taking 1/10 of their income and giving it to a church. I would say he ought to take 10% of his net worth. Assume his net worth to be $1 billion. That's what it's reported to be.
Okay.
Take $100 million and open up a cultural center in Harlem. Because why? First, it's in the Southern District of New York, and two, he's from Harlem. So he can say, I'm giving back to the community, and make it a cultural place for children to learn whatever there is to learn in music and in entertainment and so forth.
And how do you think that'll shake out?
Well, I think it would go over well.
Until Diddy starts touching people. But anyway.
But I don't think he needs to even be part of it. The point is to take this money and build
and do something. Okay.
Next thing is I think he ought to go public with a figure in the African American community. The three that I came up with, or four I came up with: Oprah, Michelle Obama, Rosalind Brewer, who's the CEO of Starbucks, or Rashida Jones, who's the CEO of MSNBC. And he should do two things. He should admit he's a hedonist and he's a narcissist. No, I'm being serious. And then what he ought to say is the raid was a wake-up call. Don't admit any liability, but say, I recognize how I'm perceived. Look, what I'm trying to do is be practical for the guy.
I got you. Hey.
Right now, all he's doing is walking around the airport with people videotaping him as he goes on vacation, flying off for another vacation the rest of the world can't afford.
That's what deviants do.
But he's not helping himself.
Of course, but he still thinks he's above the law, regardless of what's happening. He thinks his money's going to buy him out of it, and it may. Who knows? It may.
I don't know if his money's going to buy him out of it, but what I'm saying is the $1 billion does less good in jail than it does on the streets. So take 10% of it, $100 million, and make a real statement.
Yeah,
and
I guess he could do that.
I think that he could garner some favorable publicity out of it, is my point. The other thing is, like, I found it very
After the video, though, I think it's going to be hard.
Serge, right at the beginning of this podcast, you said, I found his I'm sorry to be, what was
very
the word
hollow.
you used?
Very hollow, yep.
Yep, I wrote it down, hollow and self-serving.
Yes.
Okay, what I'm saying is, the reason that sounded hollow and self-serving is it lacks sincerity.
This is true.
Okay, well, I'm saying it would take a man to say, I've led a hedonistic and narcissistic existence, and I'm acknowledging that, and I'm going to change that. And I think that would be a positive way for Diddy to put himself in a better position for if there's going to be an indictment down the road.
All right.
If there's not going to be an indictment down the road, perhaps he's taken his audience and extends it to people like me.
I doubt it very seriously.
I
doubt it very seriously.
But the point is, I tell you what, if I was sitting at home, I gave this some thought before this podcast.
All right.
But if I was sitting at home and I had no interest whatsoever except an African-American entertainer had been indicted and he's rumored to be a thug, if Tupac was alive today, and I found Tupac very entertaining, by the way.
Okay.
You know, I liked his music.
Got any of his CDs in your jukebox?
I might.
All right.
I like those West Coast guys better than
That's funny.
Anyway, but the point is, if Tupac were alive today, and I had a image of him as a thug, and he did these things, my sense of him would improve.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is take part of the $1 billion and try to put yourself in a better position for the jury that's going to be judging you. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts? Doesn't work?
Well,
For you, Serge?
that was very thoughtful. You know how you said he should rebrand himself?
Yes. No, well, I said he should rebrand Bad Boy Records.
You ever hear of The Roots?
Yes.
Black Thought is their front man, who I think is a phenomenal musical artist and a philosopher in a sense.
I thought that's where you were going rather than musical artist.
No, where I'm going is that maybe you should start. Maybe we should start calling you White Thought, because that was very thoughtful. That
White Thought.
Yeah, White Thought. Write that down.
That's not bad. Yeah. But I think we have to go like W Thought or C.
Yeah, well,
no, Caucasian Thought, because then it's easier than a W. You say.
Perhaps
C Thought. And
Black and White.
Plus it rhymes with Clark, my first name. So.
Featuring Caucasian Thought. There we go.
So those are my thoughts on how Diddy can improve his situation. I think he can seek to rebrand himself in some significant way and rebrand Bad Boy Records. I don't really think you want a 70-year-old Caucasian woman on your jury.
No, not at all. Or a Caucasian man
who's told that you're the owner of Bad Boy Records and you might have been involved in shootings around the country.
Yep.
Doesn't look good.
Well, Dub T, I thought that was a thoughtful list, but after that video, it would really take moving mountains for
it would take,
in my opinion.
Well, my point is try to move him.
All right.
Right now he's just sitting. And by the way, the video was 8 years ago. So what you say is, I don't like the man I was 8 years ago. I don't like the man I've become. I've become a narcissist and a hedonist. I'm not living. I owe a debt of gratitude to Harlem, to the family that raised me, to the people that are part of my environment. I'm going to give back.
Well, I'm a cynic, Clark Oliver. So if I was looking at that or listening to that, I would say that's the tip of the iceberg that we saw.
So for Sean Diddy's future jury pool lawyers, you want Clark on the jury and not Serge?
No, I didn't. I wouldn't. I'd be fair. I'd read the instructions and all that. You know me. I'm a civic duty type of dude.
I'm a believer in jury nullification.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to our second topic.
Moving on. Police response in America.
It's incredible, but on May 18th, 2024, there was an article in the New York Post about a woman named Michelle in Chicago. She's a mother. She lives in a home that two masked men broke into. And there's a video, if you go to the New York Post, that links you to the video of these
security camera video. Yep.
Yeah, security camera of these two men leaving the home they broke into. They apparently left when they saw her, which is, I will say, thank God.
And she and a neighbor tried to give chase, but they got away.
Well, but thank God. In other
Absolutely.
words, that they didn't murder her.
Of course.
But she called 911. So far, so good. And
say what?
And 911 thought to themselves, or institutionally said, there's no immediate threat to life. That's correct, because the felons are 100 yards away now. And so it took 4 hours for the police to respond.
And approximately 6 calls,
to
right?
a break-in, correct, to a break-in in Chicago. What are your
While
thoughts?
a woman was home.
Right.
Well, I think, they claim that the root of the problem is funding and police shortages, right? And also, they blame this delay on the 911 system and its prioritizing of calls. I don't know what really would be in a much higher priority than a break-in while someone's home, because it could turn into anything. It could turn into a rape. It could turn into a murder. So, it's kind of disturbing. And it's not like that's the only place, because what are we seeing now? Police shortages all over the place. The police are being treated unfairly, not only by the public and the media, but by their own agencies. So, who knows if they're going, all out for the people they're supposed to go all out for anymore. As cynical as that sounds, you would hate to think that they're out there being professionals and doing their job, but at the end of the day, they're human beings, Clark Oliver.
Well, one of the things you say that's very important, I think, is that how serious robbery is. The FBI has a uniform crime reporting, so-called UCR code system. 1 is murder, 2 is rape, and 3 is robbery. And this was the most serious type of robbery because it was a home invasion robbery.
Yes.
And the one place you're supposed to be safe in the world is your home. So outrageous. I think it's 100% predictable. When you incentivize something, you get more of it. When you disincentivize something, you get less of it. We've disincentivized law enforcement in the United States.
This is true.
Started with Michael Brown and the defund the police. We now have fewer police. There's over 12,000 police in Chicago, second largest police department in America behind the New York City Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
But we've gone out of our way to make it clear we don't want police in America. I really shouldn't say we. I should say certain special interest groups, particularly those that want to defund the police, have made that a political priority. I think the left has seized upon it and is preaching.
The far left, because I lean a little left, Clark, but
I know you do.
Keep it real.
Far left.
But
I think that we get what we
need.
want. We reap what we sow. We wanted to disincentivize law enforcement, and this is what we get: 4-hour waiting periods for a woman alone in her home after 2 men break in. Outrageous to me. It's become the new norm, and it's apparently acceptable to those in America who want to defund the police.
And the bothersome thing is, I don't think that the media, well, I don't really think that mainstream media does anything any justice, but whatever serves their master, you know what I mean? But I don't think they do enough justice to the crime in America. And whether it be, people love to pretend when you talk to a far leftist, well, okay, murders are down, yada, yada, yada. The shootings aren't down, and I don't think the murders are down. It's all about numbers games, Clark Hollers. And it's just terrible, man. It's evident everywhere. And if you talk to people with boots on the ground, they don't tell you crime is down. They're like, crime is up all day, every day.
The mayor of Chicago is named Brandon Johnson. The mayor of Baltimore is Brandon Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them tell the public the crime is down.
Of course. Because they have, what? What do
well, they have protection. They
Absolutely.
Right. They have armed protection around them 24/7. Let me tell you, I think that one of the lies, and I do think it could have national impact. I think that Biden running for president and others at the local level that are telling us crime is down, I think every time that is said to the average American, we react viscerally that it's BS. We don't believe it. And, arrests are down 50% in Chicago. This is my summation. Crime's not down. Arrest of criminals is down. The rest of us know that in the real world. We go into shopping centers and we see people shoplifting openly.
We
see the disrespect for law from shoplifting to guns.
And now the answer is private security guards. But when they bust a head because they're not adequately trained, then what?
What are most private security guards trained to do? Call the police.
Or pull a gun. They don't know.
Or call the police.
Yeah.
Meaning the owners of most security companies don't want the security officer engaging the criminal with a firearm.
But you put a gun on the hip of these
no, I get it, but,
yahoos who become security guards. Well, and no disrespect to security guards, but
there are a lot of good ones.
The training's not adequate.
Well, that wraps it up for our episode today on Black and White and Thin Blue Lines. We thank our listeners. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you like us, think about giving us a good rating or making a comment on social media. Again, my name is Clark Ollers.
And I'm Serge Antonin.
And we're happy to be bringing you this podcast in this video version, Black and White and Thin Blue Lines. You can also email us at blackandwhiteandthinbluelines.com. The URL is all of the words with common spellings run together without spaces between the words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But life is never easy. There's work to be done and obligations to be met, obligations to truth, to justice, and to liberty.
This podcast is the copyrighted property of Black and White and Thin Blue Lines Incorporated, a Maryland corporation. Any rebroadcast of the podcast without the written permission of the owner is prohibited. For more information, we invite you to visit the website blackandwhiteandthinbluelines.com. All of the words in the URL address use common spelling and are typed together with no spaces. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and we welcome your remarks through email. The email addresses of the co-creators, Serge Antonin, and Clark Eilers may be found on the website.